All right, Algebra 2. We are going to now talk about different operations with polynomials. And remember, as you're taking notes, if you need more time to write things down or if you need to go back and rewind, please do that because I will go through this pretty quickly. So you're always welcome to do that. And then if you have questions, I advise you to make note of that on your notes. So maybe put a question mark by it or something so that you know to ask me about that in class. So when we're adding polynomials, all we're doing is just combining like terms. What's really important when you're adding polynomials, you see how we have this plus in between these two parentheses. A lot of students see parentheses and they want to multiply. But since we have a plus sign in between there, that means all we're doing is adding the coefficients together. And we're doing that with the like terms. So as I go through here, are there any other y cubes? No. So I'm just going to bring that down. So that's 2y cubed. Are there any other y squareds? Yes. Over here, negative 4y squared. So 7 plus a negative 4 is a positive 3y squared. Notice that the y squared stays the same. I'm not multiplying them or anything or changing the exponents. And then we've got negative 6y. Are there any other y's? Yeah, right here. So I'm doing negative 6 plus 3. That's negative 3y. And then I still have this guy down here. There are no other constants, so I'm just going to bring him down. And that's how you add polynomials together. So notice that this polynomial is in standard form. The highest exponent comes first, and then all the exponents are positive. All right, so doing another one. So same idea. P squared and p squared, those combine to be 12p squared. Negative 6p plus negative 7p combine to be negative 13p. Negative 6 is a constant that combines with this constant over here, so that's negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. Now, what do you do when you have a minus in between them? Okay, I think the easiest thing to do is to distribute this negative to the whole second parenthesis. And what that means is I'm going to, when I distribute it, I'm going to be doing plus, and I'm changing the signs of everything in the second parenthesis. So instead of positive 12x squared, I would have negative 12x squared. Instead of minus 9x, I would have plus 9x. And instead of negative 3, or minus 3, I would have plus 3. And remember, the reason is because I'm essentially distributing that negative all the way through. Now, since I'm distributing, the first parenthesis doesn't get changed at all. So remember, you don't touch any of the signs in this first parenthesis. And now this looks just like the adding and the combining like terms that we did in the first example. All right, so any other x squared? Yeah, right here. So 8 plus a negative 12 is negative 4x squared. Negative 5x and 9x combine to be 4x. And then 11 plus 3 would give me 14. All right, so let's practice that. Do that again with this one. We're going to distribute that negative. So I'm going to be taking this minus sign that's in between the two parentheses and distributing it to every one of those. So this first parenthesis stays exactly the same. Here, this is going to be plus parentheses. Now I'm going to take this negative, or this positive 2t cubed, and that's going to be negative t cubed. All right, here I'm going to have a negative times a negative is a positive 3t squared, and then I'm going to have a minus 7. Okay, please make sure you do that carefully. This is very easy to do, but it's very easy to not do or to do carelessly, so be careful. All right, so are there any t's over here? There's no t's, so I'm just going to bring that 8t down. What about constants? Any constants? Yeah, negative 7 is a constant. So 6 plus negative 7 is negative 1. Now I'm looking for t squares. All right, so negative 5t squared plus 3, that'll give me negative 2t squared. and then there's no other t cubed, so I'm just going to bring that down. That's a minus 2t cubed. Now this is not in standard form, so I personally like to rewrite that. Remember, when you rewrite it, you bring the sign in front of it with it. So this is a negative 2t cubed. Next I'm going to do the t squared. Then I'm going to do the 8t, and then the minus 1. Okay, so this would be my final answer. All right, so that's adding and subtracting. Hopefully that was just a review of combining like terms and some good reminders for you. All right, so now let's look at multiplying polynomials. And I want to put this in a context of some geometry. And I know some of you are probably thinking, oh, I hate geometry, or some of you might have liked it. But remember that when we were doing things like area of a rectangle, I would just do length times width, right? So I would do 3 inches times 5 inches. That's the length times the width, or base times height, and that would give me 15 inches squared. All right, or if I was doing volume, remember that's just length times width times height. Okay, so that's just doing 2 inches times 3 inches times 5 inches. Okay, so if we multiply all of those together, 2 times 3, that's 6, and then 6 times 5 equals 30, and then I would have inches cubed because there's 3 inches there. Okay, but how does this deal with polynomials? Well, all the time we don't necessarily know the dimensions of a square or of a prism. So that's where the multiplying polynomials comes into play. So for this rectangle over here, I'm still doing length times width, but here I'm going to be doing 2x plus 3 times x minus 1. Okay? And then we'll talk about how to simplify that in just a minute. Over here with the prism, our volume is still length times width times height. All right, but here they're not just numbers. So it's going to be, I'm going to start down here with this. Okay, so I'm going to have the x times the 2x plus 3 times the x minus 1. Okay, so what we're going to talk about next is how do we simplify these expressions, because I don't want to just leave them with a bunch of parentheses. It means more to us, and we can do more with the polynomials if they're in standard form. So, reminder about multiplying polynomials. Remember, these are two binomials, which means they have two terms, and it's just distributing more than once. I spelled that wrong. Distributing more than once. Okay, so it's like I'm doing x times both of those, and you've probably done that before. I'll write it out. A lot of people don't write it out this way, but if this helps you, you can do that too. And then I'm going to be doing the -1 times both of those. So if I do that, distributing, that means I'm doing x times 2x, so that's 2x squared, and then x times 3 is 3x. Then I'm distributing the -1, so that's a -2x, and then a -3. So that's the multiplication part of it. Now remember, after you've done any kind of distributing, you have to look for like terms if there are any, and here we do have like terms. So I need to combine those. I'm going to bring the 2x squared down, and 3x minus 2x will be 1x, and then bring down the -3. So that's one way. Remember, if you have a binomial times a binomial, you can use FOIL. And remember, that's just an acronym that stands for first, outer, inner, and last. Okay, so if I have these two binomials, then I'm going to be multiplying for the first. I'm talking about the first term in each parenthesis. For the outer, I'm talking about the outermost in each parenthesis, the ones furthest away from each other. And for the inner, those are the innermost, the ones that are closest to each other. And then the last are the last numbers in each parenthesis. Excuse me. So I would get 2x squared plus 3x minus 2x minus 3, just like what we did up there. And then I would combine these like terms and get the same exact answer. All right, so either way, whether you think of it as distributing or FOIL, that's how we do that. Now, I want to make sure we understand that if I have something like this, parentheses x plus 3 squared, does it mean that I'm going to distribute the squared so that I have x squared plus 3 squared, or does it mean I have two parentheses? Hopefully you've said to yourself, it means the two parentheses and not that. That is a big no-no. All right, so if you have two parentheses, then again, you're just going to do your FOIL or distributing. All right, so I would have x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9. So when I combine those, I actually get a 6x. Notice I would have gotten the wrong answer if I tried to do this, right? We don't want to do that. That gives us the wrong answer. All right, moving on. Go ahead and, if you want to, pause the video. See if you can do this next problem on your own. All right, now that you've tried it on your own, I'm going to show you how I did it. I'm just going to FOIL. So I got x squared minus 7x plus 7x minus 49. And notice what happens when I combine my like terms is that they equal 0. They cancel each other out, and I just have x squared minus 49. Now this was a special factor pattern that we learned in first semester. Remember, this is called the difference of two squares. If I have two perfect squares and they're subtracted in the middle, remember that the way we factor it is that we have one parenthesis has x minus 7 and one parenthesis has x plus 7. And where did I get the 7 and the x? Remember, those were the square roots of x squared and 49. Okay, so if you see that, that could be a shortcut so that you know that the inners and the outers cancel out. Okay. If you see it on this example, go ahead and do it, but I'll do it the long way. All right, so I'm FOILing, not really paying attention to what I have, but I have 4x squared minus 20x plus, I'm sorry, not 20, 10 minus 10x plus 10x minus 25. And again, my inner terms combine to give me 0. So this is 4x squared minus 25. If you did the shortcut way, you could just say, oh, 2x, when I square that, that gives me 4x. And then 5, when I square that, that gives me 25. So I know I'm going to have 4x squared minus 25. But that's only when they have the same exact parenthesis where one's plus, one's minus. Okay? Don't try to do that shortcut on anything else. If you're worried about the shortcut, then just do it the long way. All right, now let's talk about this. Can we FOIL this? This is a binomial times a trinomial. Remember, we have 2 terms here and then 3 terms here, so FOIL won't really work. But that's okay. We can just use the idea of distributing. So I'm going to distribute that x to everything in that second parenthesis and distribute that negative 5 to everything in that parenthesis. So we've got x cubed minus 2x squared plus 3x, and then minus 5x squared plus 10x minus 15. Now you got to be careful with combining. Are there any other x cubes? No. Bring that down. Any other x squareds? Yeah. So 2x squared minus 5x squared. Oh, that's a negative 2x squared. So that would be negative 7x squared. Positive 3x and positive 10x. So that's 13x. And then there are no other constants, so I'm just going to bring that down. And that would be our final answer. Notice it's in standard form, and there's no more parentheses. All right, so see if you can do this one. Distribute. All right, so I'm going to have 6x cubed plus 6x squared plus 10x. Then I'm going to have 9x squared plus 9x plus 15. All right, now let's combine. No other x cubes, so I bring that down. I've got a positive 6x squared and a positive 9x squared, so that's 15x squared. 10x and 9x is 19x, and then I'm going to bring down my constant of plus 15. Alrighty then, there we go. So now we can multiply any polynomials that come our way. So, having done that, let's go back to our volume problem. Okay, so go back to that page in your notes where we were doing the volume. We said it was length times width times height, and we're doing x times x minus 1 times 2x plus 3. Now, just like when we were doing the numbers, okay, we only did 2 numbers at a time. You can only multiply 2 numbers at a time, and then take that answer and multiply by the third number. Well, we're going to do the same thing here. I'm only going to do 2 of these parentheses at a time. So it might take you a little bit longer, but it won't be too bad. So here I'm doing x times x minus 1, so that means I'm distributing. So in here, I'm going to get x times x is x squared, and then x times negative 1 is negative x. So that's what I get inside the blue stuff. Now over here, we haven't multiplied it, so I'm just bringing that down, the 2x plus 3. And now we're ready to FOIL this. All right, so I'm going to have x squared times both of those, and negative x times both of those. All right, so x squared times 2x is 2x cubed, and then I have plus 3x squared. Now down here, negative x times 2x is negative 2x squared, and then negative x times 3 is negative 3x. All right, so I'm going to combine any like terms if there are. There's no other x cubed, so that just comes down. These can combine, so I'm going to be 3 minus 2 is 1 x squared, and then minus 3x. So this is what is equal to my volume. All right, so even though it doesn't seem like much because we don't have just a number answer, this tells us a lot, and if we were in business and making boxes that look like prisms, we could analyze this function and make good use of our materials. All right, so bring these notes in next time. We're going to do more practice with them in class.